The first item we have is assignment for request for council action. We have several for finance. We have 21025 budget amendments, 21026 discussion on project 1025 design West Smith Road Phase 4, 21027 expenditure over 15,000 Osborne Medina Service Department, 21028 contract with Gatchel Grant Resources AFG Grant Fire Department, 2129 amend ordinance 13120 Airport Detention Basin, 21030 letter of interest Nowaka Fast Electric Charging Stations, 21031 amend ordinance 18420 final payment for Rotunda project job number 1081, 21032 purchase and install Memorial Park pool heater, 21033 authorize MCRC capital improvement purchase order, 2134 accept donation for estate of Howard C. Ward Jr. Next item is 21025 budget amendments. The first one we have is 21005 Muni Court Probation Department. Cindy, you here to talk about that one?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just a line item for our probation department to pay for texting notifications for the probationers that get notification from their probation officers, letting them know when they need to call in or do a video call.
Okay, any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2021-006 Muni Court Clerk's Office COVID-19. Cindy?
This is to complete the clerk's workstations. Currently, we need to purchase 4 more workstations with partitions and open to make it COVID social distancing. This is just another line item, so we can go ahead and purchase them and get them completed for the year.
And this is coming from the COVID money, the CARES Act money still?
No, we
Oh.
use that. This is coming out of the furniture fixture fund.
Oh, okay. Any questions?
Mr. Coyne, if I could.
Yeah.
I know Keith's here remotely too, but we're still tracking everything COVID-19 in case the federal government does pass another bill and it's retroactive back to January 1st, we'll be able to recoup some of these things.
And I think they're going to try to put that in there. Well, I think it will go in there, what I'm hearing. So I think we'll get that money. So let's keep track of it so we can get those reimbursed. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 20026 discussion of project 1025 design West Smith Road Phase 4. Mr. Patton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate you giving us some time here. You know, usually we don't have council discussions about projects because usually we're just replacing what's there, the same footprint. West Smith's a much bigger project than that. There are a couple design things that we wanted to bring to your attention and kind of ask for your comment. Where we're at now, this is Ed Cagle. He's from American Structure Point. They're our consultant that are preparing the plans for this project. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Thanks. This project, because it has over $2 million in federal money that will help pay for it, we're going through ODOT. We have to file ODOT protocol. To date, Ed and his company have submitted what's called Stage 1 plans, which are basically 30%. Plans are 30% complete. We've received approval from ODOT. Coming up, I think in April, will be our Stage 2 deadline. That's when plans are 60% complete. We thought it would be a good time to come to council. We're also in the middle, we're required to have a public comment period. We're in the middle of that now. We have plans available on our website and also at several different locations throughout the city that people can review and submit comments. That being said, I think Ed's going to go over the project and we've got some exhibits and we'll get into some of the areas I was talking about that we'd like to get some comment on.
Absolutely. Thank you, members of council. Mayor Hanwell, thank you for the invitation this evening. West Smith Road, as all of you know, it's a very heavily trafficked, traveled corridor in the city of Medina. It's one of the last phases within the Smith Road corridor that's receiving improvements. Certainly to the far west, you can see the difference that has made out beyond the fairgrounds west of State Road, and we're looking to follow a very similar type approach to this project. The overall scope of work is full depth pavement replacement. It is a concrete pavement, including sidewalks. As part of the project too, we'll update all ADA crosswalks and ramps within the limits of the project. We are going to be installing a new 12-inch water line to replace the deficient older infrastructure within the corridor. That'll provide optimum flow through the corridor as well as accommodate fire flows for new hydrants within the corridor as well. And then as we continue the work, pedestrian access is probably the most critical, and certainly we're looking very closely at ways of connecting folks in areas where there's a lot of gaps, especially as you start at the very west end of the project by State Road. By the fairgrounds, there are gaps on the north side and south side that go under the current railroad viaduct. We'll certainly be closing those gaps as part of this project. And the exhibit that we have, the first exhibit we're going to show, everything that's in green is replacing in kind. So there is existing walk there today, which we're going to remove and replace. Some slight readjustments just for ADA compliance.
For reference purposes, where do we start here? I can't really.
Sure, yes, the very west end at the very left at the top is State Road. That's just to the west of that is State Road. So that's roughly a Standard Welding, their facility where the work ended. So that's where the work begins. And then it drops down below, right where the railroad viaduct is, continuing to the east where Baxter and Medina Street is, and then Prospect. And then the following exhibit after this, we'll switch to the next slide here. So now we continue again, we go back to the top, we continue to the east. The green, again, it's replacing in kind. And then we have the railroad crossing for the Wheeling and Lake Erie. I have separate exhibits that will showcase here a little bit more about the railroad crossing and ideas that we have to cross folks on the north side. And then it drops down to the very south end, again, at the Wheeling and Lake Erie, continuing east to Court Street.
Now, are all these aprons going to be replaced too for?
Yes, they will be, correct, yes. So it'll certainly clean up the corridor, improve the pavement condition, improve ADA access and pedestrian access, most importantly. The type of project that we're working with is pretty much a replace in kind. So we're not widening the pavement, we're not adding capacity or modifying turn lanes or traffic control as you know it today. We're taking out what's there, replacing it brand new, and then providing the better sidewalk connectivity within the limits of the project.
One thing I wanted to point out about the sidewalk, you see the north side, we have sidewalk continuously from one end of the project to the other. The south side, you can see on this slide, we pretty much stop just west of South Elmwood. That's when you get into, used to be called Paul's Pub, whatever it is now, Cindy's. And then you get to the railroad crossing and then to our bridge and then the retaining wall on Smith. There'll be sidewalk on the north side, but there won't be any on the south side in those locations. There's just not enough room in that area.
When you get to South Elmwood and West Smith, is there any way to do something with regard to the stop signals to say that this is a two-way stop, crossing traffic? Because there's accidents there. I know just this past week there was another accident there. Is there any way to highlight that so people going from north-south understand that it is not a four-way stop? Because I think people either just go through or they stop and just go through and they don't understand that the crossing traffic from east-west does not stop. Because I know I've almost got an accident there once or twice, and I know that there was just an accident there this weekend.
I think we could take care of that right away.
This is at Elmwood, John?
Yeah.
Okay, under the stop signs at both of those locations, it says cross traffic does not stop.
Well, I don't know if we can have maybe do LEDs or something flashing, because I don't understand how people don't know that, but they just go right through.
Well, the other thing is the site obstructions are a bit of a challenge because if you're going northbound, to the right, you have the retaining wall for the creek, and then you have a metal rail on top of that to keep people from climbing over the wall. And then to the left, the railroad obstruction as well as, or the railroad crossing, as well as that cement barrier containing the creek as it comes under Elmwood. Also, we have to watch the weeds there, and it's a hard obstruction.
Yeah, I guess I know it was last week, I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday, there was two pickup trucks got in an accident.
Yes, sir.
And I remember I was coming through there, driving through, and a dump truck stopped and just started driving right at me. And when I was crossing, so I don't know what else we could do, if anything, to alert people or just make them understand that it's not a four-way stop, even though nobody's reading it evidently.
Exactly.
They just do it.
Right.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I drive a low-profile car, and the situation that the mayor brought up is exactly that. I cannot see in my low-profile car, especially going to the right. So I propose we just make it a four-way stop.
Well, I don't know if we could do it, or put flashers there, at least alerting people that are coming north-south.
No, I think a four-way stop would work better, because there's
Yeah,
times where I have to pull out into Smith Road to
Yeah, the
see.
problem with the four-way stop is it likely would not meet the state requirements. So when you have a four-way intersection like that, they have you do traffic counts on both of the roads, and the more highly traveled of the two is presumed to be the one given the right-of-way, which Smith Road is. So, I mean, we could do it, but if somebody challenged it that it didn't meet the state criteria, then we would be in trouble, not in trouble, but we wouldn't be able to cite for it, because the other thing is we have to be careful of just stopping traffic just to stop traffic. I don't know if there was ever a light there. There used to be a light
Yeah,
right
there used to
here.
be a light there.
There used to be,
Yeah, there
okay.
was a light there.
Yeah. I know there used to be one here at Elmwood and Liberty as well. And then we just made that the one-way stop to keep the 18 traffic going. So we can talk about it though and try to come up with something.
Yeah, anything with kind of flashing lights or something, just to alert people to draw their attention to it may
Yes.
help. I mean,
Yes, sir.
It may or may not, but I think that's, I believe that's one of the most dangerous intersections in our
agree.
city
I
right
agree.
now. Okay, oh, sorry.
Mayor, is there anything that warrants, if it was just a flashing light, a red and a yellow for each way, is that any problem with the route there?
Yeah, I think we could put up a light if we wanted to, but if we had the light red on Elmwood and yellow on Smith, I don't know that the people going north or south, if they aren't seeing the stop sign and the cross traffic doesn't stop, if they're going to appreciate that just because theirs is red does not mean the cross traffic is not red. Yeah, I understand what we're trying to accomplish. It's just sometimes people in their own mind have a different visual. Well, I've got a flashing red, everybody must, and they just go. So,
And Mayor, you were chief at the time, and I'm trying to remember correctly, but I think when there was a traffic light there,
There was
it
not
was a
one.
higher accident
Yeah.
area at that time with the light.
And there was not one at Huntington at that point then?
Right, no, there was not.
so they switched them.
Right.
Yeah, I know I was on the police department, but I think that might have been when Chief Davis was still here.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know that's when we took the light out here at Liberty too.
Right, right.
And I think they moved it over to Huntington as
They did,
well.
they did.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
I guess I just would put, I don't know what we could do, but we could talk about it, since you're the safety director. Just either saying in LEDs, cross traffic does not stop, or something to draw attention to people. Because I think what people do is they just get used to just pulling up, stopping, and going, and that's what they do. So, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thanks. You're welcome. Thank you. Good dialogue. I took some notes so we can look at that for you as well. So this exhibit, again, just kind of gives an overview of the sidewalk that we're proposing and the connections that we're looking to close. We could actually move on to the next exhibit, which will be the railroad exhibit. We have a couple options here, and there's actually two exhibits. There's this exhibit, and then there's one behind it. And the difference is really the alignment and location of the sidewalk. A few things I'd like to point out relative to this option is we can certainly provide a safe crosswalk across the existing railroad track. Certainly what we need to do, though, is make sure we have an ADA compliant crossing over the existing track. Fortunately, this is a situation where the precast concrete panels have been upgraded within the last 5 to 7 years. So from the Wheeling and Lake Erie, doing that work and putting that in is giving us a nice surface to extend, to work from. So we would propose, if this were the preferred alternative for the sidewalk, we would extend approximately 5 panels to the northwest so that we had a nice, clean, even surface to work from. And then our sidewalk then would extend over the track. Obviously prior to the crossing, we would have detectable warnings, the inlay detectable warnings that you have in concrete that we know today for ADA compliance. So that would be proposed. Neither of these options, and we look at option 2, neither of these options include any type of extra pedestrian crossing gate at this time or any modifications to the existing Wheeling and Lake Erie signal system. So all of this work is independent of that and not integrated with any kind of additional crossing gates at this time.
So the Wheeling Lake Erie is okay with not putting pedestrian crossing gates?
We'll have to go to them as part of a permit process. We need to bore under their tracks for a water line anyhow, so they get a say in this.
Well, I know they're going to make us sign an agreement, and we're going to have to pay them
Yeah.
a yearly fee for that water line, I'm sure.
Yeah, now we just did, remember over on Broadway, we extended that multi-purpose trail over their tracks, and they were very good to work with, but this, we'll see.
And I guess my question is at the corner of South Huntington and Smith Road, there's a fire hydrant there. Is that why that goes around the fire hydrant? Is that?
This is just the preliminary alignment so that we can line up the actual ramps perpendicular to each other at the intersection. With the new utility poles that were installed on the northwest corner in the last couple of years, that's limiting us because the larger poles, unfortunately, are the ones that would have been in a perfect world in a slightly different place. So making it ADA compliant at the crossing, the way we're showing it does work. The fire hydrants will be upgraded as part of this project. So that's an existing hydrant that we can certainly move, make adjustments as needed, including the drainage structure. There's a swale catch basin that's also in.
Well, there's also a slope there. I was just wondering how that sidewalk goes with that slope.
Correct. So what we would do is we would grade through there for a sidewalk from the back of the curb, and then we would grade appropriately around the depressed catch basin area, so it would have a very gradual slope for drainage. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll show you option number 2. Option number 2 enables us to put a wider sidewalk directly against the back of curb. That, I believe in this case, is a 6-foot sidewalk. The advantage to this option is it's one less precast panel that needs extended for the railroad. Okay. So option 1 had 5 panels, this one has 4 panels, so that does provide somewhat of a cost savings there and one less panel to install. It would again have appropriate drainage, grading that would be done through here. It's relatively flat area to work with, and we have enough room between the back of right-of-way, which is that purple dashed line just beyond the back of curb. We have enough room in there to grade appropriately for drainage that we could make this work.
Well, the one concern I have would be over here on this side because there's a parking lot.
So we're providing a sidewalk connection through there, which was on our original exhibit, all within the existing right-of-way. Right. And we're actually going to be working closely with Pat and his team to look at approach locations through there to figure out what makes the most sense if we have that whole area open.
Parking lot is, from access management, it's not really tightly controlled, so we'd like to work with the business and.
Well, I'm just wondering if you put a sidewalk in, I mean, it's all gravel right now.
Yeah.
And it's a parking lot, and then Wheeling Lake Erie has their signal box there too, which causes another issue because of the site and all that, with people walking around there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and Pat, this is the one I talked to you about a couple months ago, that stretch there, because we have so many students from Garfield who walk along there, and they're walking in that heavy gravel right now. So I'm just thrilled to see a sidewalk on that side.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the sidewalk's not a problem. We'd like to, like I said, right now, there's really not a defined apron that's loggerheads. Work with the property owners and put in real aprons, real access, something more defined and safer for everyone.
Well, it seems to make sense the way you have this one with the wider sidewalk along the curb because you get away from the railroad track. Because right now they just walk down the railroad track. They just cut through South Huntington and walk down the track.
That and just from aesthetics, the previous one where you had, a 2 or 3 foot strip between the sidewalk and curb, I don't think that would ever look great, and I don't know who would maintain it.
Right, I agree with you.
But this one does have a sidewalk right up to the curb. That's a concern, I think, but it's 6-foot sidewalk, so.
No, I think as long as the curb and the sidewalk maintain the same level, because if you go down everywhere else where the sidewalk's on the curb, the sidewalk sinks. And it's always lower than the curb.
Yeah, we can do that. So this would, I guess I'm hearing this would be the preferred option then? The wider sidewalk but comes right up to the curb?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And when you put these in next to the curb, do you ever drill in and put rebar
We
between
do.
the
We started, actually, I think it was on Union Street. We did that many years ago. There's only 33 foot of right-of-way there, so you get 25 foot of street, 4 foot of sidewalk on each side. It has to come right up to the curb. So we started putting dowels from the curb and the pavement into the sidewalks.
That way they wouldn't sink, I guess, would be
Correct,
the
yeah.
best thing, okay.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you. Any additional questions at this point for this slide?
No.
Okay, great, thank you. We can advance to the next slide, please. So this is the fun part of every project. It's not necessarily building the project itself and installing the new material. It's how you manage traffic, obviously during construction. We're looking at a few different options right now. And again, we're still in the preliminary phases of developing our maintenance of traffic scheme. What I wanted to do today was just kind of give an idea of what we're anticipating for a general truck detour, understanding and appreciating the volume of commercial traffic west of State Road with the manufacturing facilities and being sensitive to getting and maintaining truck traffic throughout the duration of the project. we wanted to consider an option so that truck traffic could be detoured during the whole course of the project. Local traffic would be managed on a block-by-block closure, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute, but I just wanted to give the overview of what we're anticipating for a potential truck detour, and one that provides a safer work zone during construction for both the contractor and the residents. One unique challenge we have on this segment of Smith Road versus, say, to the west, is we're relatively narrow. The pavement's only 14 foot wide, and so when you're working in such a narrow lane, trying to occupy it with heavy equipment, worker safety, having the appropriate protection for the workers as well as safety for vehicles, and not having accidents through there, either conflicts with the cranes or the equipment or the track excavators. We wanted to come up with an option that made sense, but certainly something we're continuing to refine. If we go ahead and jump to the next slide. So we're looking at a potential variable block closure, and the paper print's a little bit easier to read, so I apologize trying to see that, from a distance with the text. But our primary objective here is to try to come up with an option where we can go through as a pre-phase, phase one, and replace the water line work. Since the discussion of our stage one plan, we're also working closely with the Medina County sanitary engineer, and at the county's expense, they will be replacing the sanitary laterals, which makes sense. That way, we don't have to come back later and tear the street up. Well, the sanitary primarily runs closer to the north side on the westbound lane. So that's certainly something we're looking at, how we can go out in a pre-phase, almost with a rolling closure, block by block, that we can install all the sanitary laterals first, because the sanitary is relatively deep, anywhere from 8 to 10 feet. That sanitary work can be completed, and then following the completion of the sanitary laterals, we can come back and start working on the water line. Again, doing a rolling closure where they can plate it as they advance work each day, and then we can have all the utility work done, typically through the winter. So in a perfect world, based on our current schedule, the construction would begin sometime in the late fall of 22, early winter of 23, where a lot of contractors like to be out working through the winter, keeping their guys busy and installing conduit and underground utility work. Then once all the utility work is done, then the contractor can come back and start doing the full pavement removal and replacement. And also provides a little bit larger of a work zone for the linear paving operations, which typically provides a better bid price because they have more of a length, more of a distance to work with. One particular element here that we'll have to work closely with is phase 2, which is under the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railroad. As Pat mentioned, we are going to have to jack and bore a steel casing pipe under the railroad, which will allow us to then install the new 12-inch water main. So that'll be an operation where we'll actually have a jack and bore pit on either side of the existing grade crossing, staying within the limits of Huntington, just to the east, and to Elmwood, and being able to get equipment in, jack and bore, put the steel casing pipe in, so that's completed, and then it gives the contractor the ability to then push the 12-inch cast iron water line under the railroad, and then we can continue further to the east, connecting the water line in South Court Street. So really, the section between Elmwood and Court is our tightest area to work with the water line. It's currently located just north of the back of curb, up against the sidewalk in that really narrow area against the brick buildings. And based on service connections and maintaining a 10-foot minimum offset to existing sanitary, which is a requirement per EPA standards, we're going to have to pretty much put it back in place. So one of the things we're looking at is a temporary water line connection, extending a temporary hydrant, or in this case, maybe even leaving it permanent at the corner of South Court and Smith, and providing us some redundancy there so we can still service the buildings while we're putting in the new line, and then reconnect the services, test it, flush it, and then reconnect everyone throughout the corridor. So it's certainly a challenge when you're working in such a tight area. But one of the things we're looking at now is potentially eliminating some of the colored phases. So we're hoping we can get by with, say, 3 main phases, so we can go out and get larger runs of pavement done at a better bid price for the city. In doing that, we need to maintain access to properties, and we're also extremely sensitive to the businesses that are located in there. And by doing a block closure, we essentially can get in and get out a lot quicker, instead of, say, doing an eastbound closure and then flipping it and doing a westbound. So then they're inconvenienced twice. And another nice advantage of doing the block closure is with concrete pavement, our pavement joints, the finishing of the concrete, I think the overall quality of the product certainly looks a lot better, and it's a lot easier for the contractor to get more work done in a shorter amount of time as well. So a lot of moving pieces, a lot of little parts, but wanted to just share the draft overview with everyone this evening, and certainly open to discussions and ideas as well.
Is there a redundant water line on West Smith or just one? And how old is it?
Right now, there's actually 2 water lines, an 8-inch and a 10-inch. And they work in tandem. They're kind of redundant, but we have different services. No one's tapped off of both, but they do work in redundancy. This project will remove those because I believe they were both installed in the 60s, something like that.
So there's only going to be one line, and is it a 10-inch then?
It's a 12. It'll be a 12.
It's a 12-inch.
Yeah. And it'll be ductile iron, I think Ed mentioned.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cast iron.
Ductile iron, yes.
Ductile
And I guess on some of the side streets, are there, I know in South Huntington, I heard there's a redundant line on South Huntington, there's 2 water lines. Is there the same on all the other streets, or is there just one?
Typically, there's just one on every street. The redundancies, when you network it, you connect it, and so you have ability to feed at any given location from 2 different directions is how you get your redundancy.
Great. Questions?
I think we just wanted to highlight this because in the other phases of Smith, as Ed mentioned, we kept one lane open in one direction. We first did the westbound line and then the eastbound. This is different. We're going to go block by block. We think this work lends itself well to this because there's so many connecting streets. Certainly if you're in that block that's being worked on, it's going to be frustrating. But as Ed pointed out, we can be done quicker and then you're pretty much finished. In the past, you'd be bothered again when we flip to the other lane. So we think this site works well for this, so that's why we're leaning towards it.
I'd like to thank Pat Patton. We're certainly looking forward to Smith Road being shut down again.
That's what we do.
Were we also going to talk about Baxter and Medina Street?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Kimberly, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I was just curious about the sidewalks on the north side of the road. You had mentioned that they might be a little bit wider, and I was wondering if there was any thoughts or consideration of making it into a multi-purpose path and possibly saving some dollars there. And we are looking at some other path connections in the industrial parkway, and going to be looking at some planning grants through NOACA for a multi-purpose path down Lake Road, and we wanted to connect that into West Smith Road for the entire length of Lake Road as well as West Smith Road. And I just was wondering if you guys had thought about making the sidewalks a multi-purpose path.
Well, it's certainly a possibility. It would be a huge expense. I think we might have to get right away to do that.
It would be a little bit tighter with the right-of-way, just with the limits occupying the lawn strip. If we pushed it out further, say on the north side, we are pretty tight along the right-of-way line where we're tying into. And with it being an ODOT project, there's a real sensitivity to even a temporary would require a partial take at that time to borrow that property. So we were very focused on avoiding as much right-of-way as possible to keep costs contained overall in the project, because when you do begin that process, you still have to go through the formal acquisition process of plans, meeting with the property owners, paying them for the temporary use of that property. So we were trying to keep costs as low as we could and avoiding as much right-of-way as we possibly could.
Well, what if you made it a multi-purpose trail but didn't have the, I guess the question is safety, didn't have the distance between the curb of the street and the sidewalk? I mean, you'd move closer to that and it'd be a smaller area. Is that feasible or is that just not doable? So you would have a 10-foot multi-purpose path, but instead of expanding the right-of-way to the north, you would just make it more towards the street. But I think the question would be, you might have to get rid of some street trees, I would imagine, right?
Trees, and there's also a lot of utility poles in there that you have to work around. It's all feasible, it just takes money.
Well, I don't think we want to, I don't think I would be in favor of expanding the right-of-way, taking people's front yards away. I mean, the
We
yards are
can look
small
at
enough
it
as
and
it is.
see, I mean, right now, we're kind of just speculating. We can kind of try and get a firmer grasp on what it would take in terms of effort and cost.
Yeah, I mean, the yards along West Smith are small as they are. I mean, the houses are 20 feet from the curb.
Yeah.
So the answer to taking more, I would say no. But if you could put a 6-foot sidewalk in, more like a paved, asphalt paved instead of concrete, then the next question is, well, how often do you got to replace that?
Right,
That's the other question.
yeah.
Because the concrete, you would never replace it. I mean, it'd be 30 years before that would really go bad. But if it's possible to kind of do that, because I kind of agree with you, there's going to be a lot of connectivity and people going to the industrial area. A lot of people ride their bikes. Right now, they ride them on the street and the cops pull them over and say, what are you riding in the street for? So, you know.
That's not true. They're allowed to ride in the street.
Well, my nephew has another question about that because he's always the one that's getting in trouble. But I think
Send them my way.
from the question of people trying to get to the industrial area, because a lot of those people either walk or ride their bikes to there, and to make it safer and easier would probably be better. So I don't know.
So the other item was on your, you were asking for public comments and feedback. What's the deadline for that, and did you guys ship that out to all the businesses in that area?
Yeah, we put them out last week, last Monday. and
Okay.
March 1st is the deadline.
Okay, thank you.
And then as a supplement to that too, as part of the NEPA process with ODOT, when we have public notification for survey, for overall environmental clearance, we did have a separate mailing back in the fall to the property owners, everyone adjacent to the corridor, inviting them to offer any comments or feedback directly to Pat as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments, or?
We have one more exhibit to go.
No. Anybody else say anything before we get to use it? No? Okay, go ahead.
And then we'll show the Baxter Medina Street exhibit. So this is a proposed rendering of the relocation of Baxter Medina Street to make it more of a conventional, say, 90-degree style intersection. We're very fortunate in this area that we have room to work with, especially on the northeast corner, where you see in the existing intersection box, the little brown house in the bottom left. What we found out from doing our right-of-way work is the city actually owns property pretty close to, not quite near the edge of the home, but along that radius return. So we do not require any right-of-way there to realign or shift the road further to the east, which that was very nice. The only right-of-way that we're going to need to take is on the southwest corner by the Baxter Street Apartments. By realigning it, we will need a small strip take from that property owner. I believe it's 0.03 acres, so it's a relatively small take. And this will allow several things to happen. One, we're going to improve pedestrian access with the sidewalks, so we'll have a nice continuous flow of pedestrian access under the bridge, obviously to the fairgrounds, east and west. In addition to that, we're going to have improved sight distance. Currently, as we know, driving, if you're heading south on Medina Street, you almost have to inch pretty far out into Smith Road to really look back to the east. Just because of the vertical curve, your sight distance is blocked. And then as you look to the west, you obviously have the abutment from the railroad crossing as well on the north side. So it certainly lends itself to an idea for realignment. And this is a rendering based on our proposed design that we're looking to improve this intersection. And I think in the end, it's certainly a good idea to make things safer for everyone.
So who's doing the turf management there, because it's pretty green?
I know, we're impressed with that too.
Because you have green trees, it's fall out, you got green grass. So this is the area here where you're talking, you're going to do the.
Exactly,
Correct.
just a real minor
Are you
right-of-way
taking
take.
any right here?
No, that's what
We are
the
not.
city owns.
That's city property.
So how far over here, are we talking like right about here?
Correct, yes,
So it would kind of cut right here.
Correct.
correct. Baxter Street actually kind of transitions a little bit to the west. It curves back to the west a little, so that necessitated the take to the west side, which allowed us to really to square up the intersection and avoid the home, avoid that property, and not have any damages to that parcel. And still meet all the current design criteria for sight distance. So, we always say a picture is worth 1,000 words. It looks a lot better than when you look at it on the plans.
Right. And this is another intersection that historically has been a high accident area too because of the site. So I think that would,
Absolutely.
lining things up would make much more sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Just to wrap things up, schedule-wise, like I mentioned, April, we have our next due date for the plan submittal. In May, we should get our right-of-way authorization, which means we can then begin to acquire the right-of-way. ODOT permit gives us a year to do that. That's kind of their standard. All that being said, we look to bid this project at the end of 2022 and begin construction in the beginning of 2023. Two last points. We always get to ask about our street lights and street trees. We certainly intend on doing both. Right now, our preference is we'll bid those as alternates to the project. Reason being, our grant is capped. We get, I think it's $2,046,000. If we go over, then the rest is on us. We'd like to include them as alternates because if our bid comes in lower, then the grant can pay for it. If it doesn't, then we can take care of it on our, locally, and probably a lot cheaper. But if we included them as alternates rather than in the base bid, we have that flexibility. We can decide once we get the prices.
Good.
Well, my question is, when we do these as alternates all the time and we put in the street lighting, I know we have a citywide agreement with Ohio Edison regarding the cost per light. However, are we going to own those? And if they're LEDs, do we throw that in with the cost? I can't remember if there's a per light additional charge or if it's all wrapped into one, because
Cost install would be on us. And as far as Edison billing, I don't know how the billing works with the LEDs versus the conventional. I'd have to look into that.
yeah, because I think we're going to try to switch to all LEDs, of course,
Yeah.
because it's less maintenance long-term as far as,
cheaper long-term,
it's
too.
cheaper to operate. But I didn't know if we pay the same cost, because I think our cost per year is about, is it 370,000, 300, am I in the right ballpark, Nina? How much, I'm sorry?
14,000 a month is what we pay for
Oh, is
street
it?
luminaires.
Okay, so it's not as high as that, what I thought, okay.
Yeah.
But Nino, I think we checked with them on the LEDs, and wasn't the cost per month increased for the LEDs versus the others?
We pay for the usage. I mean, the kilowatt hours, I guess we have to look with respect to the charges on the kilowatt hours, but if they're LED, they use less. So I believe when we put the new lights in and they're LEDs, they're aware that they're LEDs, because we own the ones like we did on Broadway, Pat, or is it Edison still owns those 14 that we put up?
The ones on Broadway we own because those are special. These, I would assume, would just be part of their program.
Would fall in with, because the replacements, they'll be
Yeah.
with Edison, so. We're gonna have to ask Amy Hopkins for clarification, to be honest with you.
Because I think if we do more of these projects, we're always going to switch to the LEDs because it makes more sense and they're brighter. And you have more control of the lighting, I guess, to a certain extent. You look around in the different parking lots of the city that use LEDs, they're a lot brighter and they're safer. But again, if I don't know, we should get charged less per, because we have less kilowatt hours. But I don't know if that happens. I don't know what the contract says or provides.
Yeah, the contract, the ESIP no longer exists. They just kind of govern under the rules or the conditions of the ESIP. They did come to us, that's a whole nother story about changing each light to LED. The city would have to pay up front. It was $208 per fixture. They would still own them. It was like $832,000 due the entire city because they own 4,030 lights.
Right. But, I guess the question would be, if our cost was cut to a third from 168,000 down to something like 80,000 a year, the payback period, I guess you just have to calculate what that would be to see if it's worthwhile to do it. So, any other questions? Well, Ed, thanks for your presentation and thanks for the information. That was helpful. If we have any other questions, I'm sure that we'll contact Pat. Maybe he'll contact you or whatever's easiest to try to solve some of those issues. I don't know if Jim with the school and stuff, if you might have follow-ups, I'm not sure.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item has been pulled because it wasn't necessary to come before finance. It came before the Board of Control meeting. So we go to item number 5, which is 21028, contract with Gatchel Grant Resources, AFG, for the fire department. Mayor Hamel?
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize to the council. We received this grant last time on the day of council, so there was no way we could get it on the agenda, and it has a deadline of February 12th. This is for the Gatchel Grant Resources to apply for a grant to replace our SCBA's, and we pay them a fee to do that for $3,500. It's the entire fleet of the department as well as spare tanks. We try for this year after year. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. But for us to be eligible for this grant, first of all, they didn't do one in 2020. So this one that we're asking for permission to apply for now is actually for the 2020 grant. And if we're unsuccessful, we'll have the opportunity to apply again in September of 2021 and take another shot at it. But because of the short deadline we have, we're going to need to pass this tonight with the emergency clause, and then take it right to council to meet the February 12th deadline, because our next meeting would be beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
Second, including the emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 21029, amend ordinance 13120, Airport Detention Basin Project number 947. Patrick?
Thank you. Council passed this, I think, last July. Since then, we've had more review comments from both Medina County and the FAA. We've addressed those, and we now have full approval. The only issue is those comments resulted in an increased cost estimate. So we're here asking to modify that ordinance and increase it to $178,000. We did, and maybe the mayor can speak on this, talk to the Stevenson Foundation about paying for part of this.
Yes, sir. We went out and did a presentation, Mr. Huber and I. Jim, I'm not sure, Jim was not able to make that meeting, but Rick Stevenson and Don Mish from Huntington Bank, because they couldn't quite understand in writing, what the concept was and why do we have to have this and on and on. So we kind of showed them the master plan. We showed them the new administration building. We showed them the new hangars, where this is going to go, and if we could build more hangars and create a revenue stream. And then they started to understand the positive impact. One of the things they requested, and Greg provided to them, is the positive economic impact having the airport has for our community. And once they saw those numbers, they were willing to pay a third of it. But back then, a third was $50,700. So I reached back out to Don and Rick Stevenson and told them, this is what's happening. We're taking it, to finance on today. And would they be willing to reconsider and stay at a third, or would they like to lock in at the $50,000 they originally approved? And then we would have to ask council to pay more. And the two of them agreed. Jim and I will both have to abstain, but the two of them agreed to go up to not to exceed $60,000, which was very gracious of them.
Great.
Thanks. Any further question or comment?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstentions?
Actually, I do not need to abstain on this one. I just have to, we have to abstain when we vote on it for Feckley.
Oh,
or
you
for
do?
Stevenson.
Okay, I didn't
Yeah.
know if you had, okay.
Yeah, so I'm okay with this.
Okay.
The mayor and I can't vote on anything for Stevenson that benefits the city, though.
Gotcha. All right. The next item we have is 21030, letter of interest from NOACA for the fast vehicle charging stations. Who's doing this one? Mayor? Patrick?
Thank you. NOACA has a program to install fast-charging vehicle charging stations throughout the region, and they've opened it up to anyone that's interested. They have targeted several areas, including the city of Medina. This would, if council authorized it, basically just let us submit the required letter that tells them we're interested. They would then do basically the groundwork, look into it. We would work with them and select an actual location. It does not bind us to anything. If we decide we don't want to do it after they look into it, then we won't. It doesn't bind them to say they're definitely going to give us these charging stations. But the nice thing about this program is it's 100% funded through NOACA. There's no match for the city. We'd like to go ahead and at least look into it.
Well, I have a question. I know we have, what do we have, 8? Ability to do 8 charging stations in our
Correct,
current
yeah.
parking deck. Now, we have applied for regular charging stations. These are different.
Level 2 is what they call it.
So what's the difference? I mean, where are we at right now as far as any charging stations?
Level
located?
2 ones we applied through the Ohio EPA end of last year. We still haven't heard one way or the other. We still think we're in good shape. And I don't know this because we haven't heard, but discussions with them, there's a possibility they might just fund 4 of our 8, which might work out well if we get 4 fast charging stations.
Well, the other question is, I don't know if I remember speaking with either Colleen Swedick or Bill Hudson regarding the older parking deck, getting some stations put in there, because I know there was discussion about that.
Yeah, and that'd be a great location too. What's so attractive about here to both programs is that we've got all the infrastructure. We
Right.
built it for this, so we're basically plug and play. We're ready to go, so.
So I guess the question would be, I know the county owns the property where the parking deck is how would this work? Would we try to do both, or would we just do this parking deck?
Well, if we're submitting a letter of interest, it would have to be incumbent on us to be able to enter into whatever agreement it is, saying we control the property, or whoever controls the property authorizes this. It'd have to be like a long-term lease, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I guess the other question would be, is it beneficial to have 2 governmental entities submit for the request
Yeah.
on both projects? Or, I mean, what would be more beneficial to try to get the
I
fast
think
charging
there,
station?
if we are looking to put it somewhere with the county, I think it would benefit it to, know we're both on board, both in agreement.
Well, I guess I just want to do whatever best to get either in this parking deck, some fast stations, and in the county. Why don't we try to see if the county's interested in doing it with us? And
Right now, like I said, just a letter of interest to start looking at, they picked out a few sites that they thought were potentially good locations, including like the rec center and here, but they haven't, settled on any. They need to do the groundwork and that kind of stuff to
Okay.
decide what the best one is.
well, I guess we
Is-
can
is-
just double check with the county and
Is
see.
it premature to ask them if they thought about the other parking deck and maybe take a look at that as well?
I've discussed that with them, yeah,
Okay.
they're open to either one. Like I said, they
Either one
selected
or
these-
both?
Pardon me?
Either one or both?
I doubt, in fact,
You
I'm
don't
pretty sure
think
they
both?
wouldn't do both, no.
Okay.
At
Because I
least
think
not
that's
now.
what you're asking, John.
Right,
Could we,
right.
could we do both at the
Right.
same time? And you're saying they don't want to do that?
I don't think at this point, no.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I think eventually, they've got an aggressive program to have hundreds of these installed by 2030,
Right.
including more in the city and the county.
Well,
Well,
I
I
guess
mean-
what I would recommend then to the council, if I may, is that being the infrastructure is here and things are in place, we go ahead and do this one at the first round, show them how easy we are to work with and
Right.
get them whatever they need, and then try to take another run at the county one.
I agree, because I mean, this is going to happen. We know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, we know where the direction is going, what people want to do. We all know what Tesla's doing, so we know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So we got to be prepared for it. So
Yeah,
the
we
more
had to
prepared
s-
we are, the better. If
we had
if
to
we have
sit
more
through-
charging stations in the city, we'll be ahead of the curve, and we might get attract more people to come to the city. And so it's just something that's beneficial to
Yeah.
us.
We had to sit through a webinar about this, and they had some eye-popping predictions about the number of electric vehicles that'll be around in the next 10 years. And yeah, they're putting a lot of money. This is just the first wave. They plan on having an annual program to install these.
Now, this first wave and this first grant is just for public properties, I would imagine, because I'm sure there's going to be something in the
That's what they're
future for
focused
private
on,
property.
yeah. They're looking for the easy locations where they
Okay.
can get them in quickly.
All right, well, I guess the next question that I raise is that, as a city, I mean, it could be optional for a business when they redevelop or come to us a bit, you know, but I don't know if we have to look at, and this is maybe for a Jonathan question, our code, to update our code about putting stations in and what has to be done and what we're looking for. That's something that's going to be coming down. And if there's a redevelopment project, do we try to require it to encourage it or something so that the businesses, we get more businesses adapting to this and it'll be beneficial to us? I'm not sure.
I think that's one thing that we need to look at, and that could possibly be part of the discussion in the comprehensive plan. I don't want to speak for Jonathan because he's not here, but in the comprehensive plan, part of what we could be looking at is the sustainability of the city, which would be some of these EV charging stations, because I attended a seminar last week, and a lot of what they talked about is you have to really think differently. Like right now with fuel, you go to the gas station, you're getting regular gasoline and you're there for 2 or 3 minutes. So it's a very short visit. So now you have to think about when you're driving somewhere, you park and then you're gonna go to lunch and you're gonna go shopping or you're gonna go to work and then you're charging up. So maybe you're at one of those level 2 or level 1 station. And then of course the level 3, I guess, is the highest with the amount of charging time. So it's a little bit of a reversal of how you're thinking about the EV charging stations with these electric vehicle cars. And the other thing that I think we need to be thinking about as we are making improvements to the park systems, because those all have parking lots, that's another location where we might want to think about the EV charging stations as well as the rec center.
Well, you're correct, and also when we do these projects that we're talking West Smith, and I know West Smith doesn't lend itself that well right now, but you know, there are some, especially down where Loggerheads is, some parking areas that if we're putting in utilities, we may want to adapt to that and say, well, we got to run power to this because we could put a couple stations in that parking lot that, you know, they could park there or do whatever, and then it'd be a connection point where we can actually have a spot in that parking lot where we can have a couple outdoor stations, EV stations, put in that parking lot. And then when we look around the other projects that we're doing through the city, if there's ever, you know, parking, either off-street parking or street parking, that we could put a couple spots on the parking on the street too, because I know that's going to occur too. We have it happening, going to happen here with the Liberty project, that we're going to do some things to the street. Maybe we make it adaptable for 1 or 2 ability to adapt and put the utilities in while we're tearing up the concrete, just to have it ready. We don't have to use it, but if we have it ready, we can use it. It's just something that we should start thinking about when we do all these different projects we do out throughout the city. So that'd be helpful to us, because the more, the more ability we are to adapt to something like this, I think we can be way far ahead of a lot of other cities, and people will come here because we are, and I think that would be very helpful to us. So, any questions?
We did ask for the emergency clause. By the time this gets to council, the deadline will be less than 30 days.
Okay.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second included emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item 8 is 21031, final payment for project 1081 for the City Hall Rotunda. Patrick?
Thank you. The rotunda, as you can see, is done. The final cost came in at $165,390. We had estimated originally as $245,826, so it came in well under that. Final cost, we did have a couple of change orders, one for additional LED lights and additional millwork on the desks up there, and also the desk back there.
So the difference in the cost from 245 to 165, or the $80,000, that money then would go, I assume, to is it the police department for the payroll? Is that what was decided when we did all this?
That I don't know.
Chief, you recall?
That was my understanding.
Okay, of course it is.
Of course it is.
But Keith, is Keith still
We
on?
had to
Keith?
have the POs, I'm sorry, Keith.
I'm here.
Yes, is that, do you recollect that? Is that what was decided?
The audio's a little shaky. Can you ask the question again? You were.
Oh, the question was, we have about $80,000 of savings from the Council Rotunda project. And when we did all this, we had a certain amount of money we had to spend through the CARES Act. Now, this $80,000 savings, is this going to the payroll of the safety services, which includes, I believe, the police department and fire department?
We're going to have to chat with the attorney because I'm not sure on the timing if we're still allowed to do that or not.
So what would happen to the 80,000?
Well, if not,
If we're not allowed to apply it to the payroll, we'll just have to return it.
I'm not so sure, because they extended it to 12/31 of this year, so we've got a couple other projects with completing the heating and cooling, with the dampers and the thermostats, and we've talked about a number of other projects that if more money came along, it would be helpful. So, I mean, Dan's here, I think the dampers was
77,000.
77,000 in and of itself, because we have to replace some ductwork up in the ceiling of every zone. And if you think, Dan, you know how many zones?
42.
42 zones between City Hall and the police department. So there's pieces that have to go up in the ceiling, and then different thermostats and that will make the efficient system that we have even more efficient, because now it's working with this old technology that is not working so well. And we knew that going in, but we only had so much money and so much time to work with it. But if this other money is available, Keith, it's your understanding that they extended that to 12/31, right?
When you say 12/30?
Right, it is. The thing that we need to ask the attorney about is we originally had to have these encumbered, and we encumbered it for this. So now that it's back, I think we're allowed to move it on, but we're just gonna have to double check.
Okay.
Nino, is that what you're?
I was just going to mention that we had to have the money encumbered by November 20th, and even though the money was originally estimated $245,000, $159,000 was originally locked into this project, and then the change orders are going to be coming out of public buildings because there was no more money available. That other money had to be accounted for, and it was going to the PD or safety services. Whatever wasn't accounted for by November 20th in our projects designated by the council or approved was going to go to safety services.
That's what I thought, but, and I would assume that this money would be part of that, so. So, any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 21032, purchase Memorial Park pool heater from, well, this says Precision Mechanical, but Jansen? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I do need to explain this one a little bit better. I was trying to get a request in as soon as possible because we're at a pretty narrow window for getting a PO in place, ordering a piece of equipment, it being here and being installed by the time we need it this spring. When I originally turned in the request, well, let me take a step back. The heater that we have at the pool is one of the original heaters. It's probably circa 1980. We limped it through for the last several seasons since the pool was renovated. By renovating the pool, we obviously put in the zero depth entry, which is working against us when it comes to trying to heat pool water because it's shallow, it evaporates quick. We have to refill the pool, put in that 55-degree water, and then heat it up. So the number one complaint that we get at the pool is the temperature of the pool. The boiler that we have is about 400,000 BTUs, and we got together with a number of contractors to get some quotes because it's a unique setting that we have at the outdoor pool. Our heater and all of our mechanical equipment is basically in a vault, a bunker, concrete bunker underneath the pool. So we have a number of different challenges. Dan graciously helped me out the last couple days to figure out what is the best option for us. The request that I turned in was for $49,000. That was the surefire way to fix our problem. with a high-efficiency unit. The time that Dan put in, we basically confirmed that we can buy a much less expensive unit, and per the state codes and the installation recommendations, make it work. So I'm going to request to modify this finance request to not to exceed $25,000 for Aqua Pools Incorporated, who was a new vendor that we set up at Board of Control earlier today. I do want to thank Dan for all of his time. That's a pretty substantial cost savings. So thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Any
Thank you,
questions on that?
No, and this is something that we discussed back when before the pool was reconstructed. You know, it was, I think we spent money to replace the boiler. Is that correct, Mayor? Do you remember? Or
I think we just did some minor repairs on it to try to limp it along as we could,
Okay.
and we're to the end of the cliff now, so.
Right. Anyhow, you're right. We have been discussing this for a long time. So, thank you, and thank you, Dan.
Move to approve?
Second.
Just one question, I'm sorry. So 25,000 is install everything out the door, or it's 25 just for the heater, and then we're going to have more coming?
There's a couple different things that have to happen. The quote, I see Paul probably going through the notes looking for where I came up with that number. There is a revised quote. It's about a little over $18,000 to do it, but Dan and I believe there's an additional piece that they did not quote that's going to be necessary. So that's why I'm asking for not to exceed $25,000 for this project. There will be a cost to replace a gas line and electrical, but we should be able to handle that within our existing budget. The funding for this, I do want to mention, I forgot to bring it up. You'll see on the request it was to use pool carry forward, and then our splash pad account. To me, it seemed like a good utilization of funds. The splash pads were closed last year, and it's not looking very promising for this year. So it makes sense to keep that money in aquatics. It'll be used for a good purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
So, any other questions? Okay, so we had a motion and a second.
Yes.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 21033 MCRC Capital Improvement Fund Purchase Order. Jansen?
Yeah, thank you. This is to request the purchase order for Medina City Schools for the current cash balance of the capital account. We did take the capital improvement plan to the Rec Center Advisory Committee on January 21st. You'll see some of the projects that are identified in there. A few of the ones for this year that I want to touch on, we're trying to figure out how to bring people back to the Rec Center. The family memberships from 2010 to 2019 went from 49% of our memberships being family memberships to 31% in 2019, and that number dropped to 28% in 2020. So when we looked at, there were a couple projects that were on there that we talked to the Rec Center Advisory Committee and we put those on the back burner. One was replacing an $80,000 scoreboard. And in turn, we have a water feature, which is the #1 amenity at the leisure pool, that is broken, and it's been broken for a while. So we've been working with a contractor to come up with a new design to replace that retrofit a new feature onto it to bring that attraction back. And then a second project that's on there is a playground surfacing project for the Rascal Room. The playground is in disrepair and it's not able to be used, and we identified that to be repaired because it would seem like a disservice if it's been closed this entire time and we didn't take action to fix it. So those are our two big projects for this year. You'll see on for the following year, there's about a $400,000 roof replacement that it's my understanding has been discussed for a while. We might be able to push that back one more year, but I just haven't got clear communication from the business office yet. I've talked to Joe and John about it. We need to dig into it a little bit, but it's looking like that's definitely in the near future here in 2022, maybe 1 year beyond.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, this one I will need to abstain from because it benefits my employer.
Okay.
Move to approve?
Second?
Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Motion carries. We have 21034, accept the donation for the estate of Howard C. Ward Jr. for Christmas decor. Keith, you're on this one. You're on mute. You're off mute, but we can't hear you.
Hit one of your volume buttons, Keith.
Keith Durham?
I can address this. We're notified by the estate of Howard Ward that he's a graduate of Medina High School in 1941. He wanted to bequeath money to the city of Medina as a result of his regard and the family's regard for where he grew up. The sum of money he is giving to us is $75,000, and it's earmarked for Christmas lighting. And this ordinance would acknowledge receipt of the money, and it would also authorize the mayor in his ability to sign receipt for the money, and that's what is in front of you on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Huber. Mr. Bacoli, I know that you're excited about additional funds being allocated.
I've been telling you for 9 years that people love the lights.
Mr. President,
Wait, Paul?
there is a Santa Claus.
Mary Hamel?
I just see on the RCA, and I don't want to miss it, that this donation to the city is in memory of the Medina High School class of 1941, I believe, where this gentleman graduated. And the other thing is, in addition to authorizing the city to accept the money and provide a receipt, we had to create a fund in 141, or a fund of 141 to track it separately, and I think he's asking that this be appropriated into that account.
Thank you. And I think this is exciting. I know we started this project many years ago, and it really brings joy to many people, not only that live in the city, but that are associated with the city, grew up in the city, and this is one testament of the importance of what we do in the city to people around the United States, and this is very exciting. Mrs. Marshall?
Mr. President, I just wanted to let you know that we are already getting requests for lights in the Southtown District, which is just the expansion of Main Street. So this money is really timely. Thank you.
Well, the money may be timely, but I guess the spending of the money is going to have to be determined by us in conjunction with the goal of the person bequesting it to the city, and this will be very helpful. So appreciate it.
Mr. Huber, do you know if he has any relatives still in this area, or?
I do not know.
I just thought it might be nice if anybody's still here related to him, that we invite them to when we do light. Something we could do publicly, maybe when we light the tree.
What we could do is contact the law firm that handles his estate, and maybe just ask if he has anybody, and at the council meeting, maybe we can have them come just to recognize them. So that'd be good.
Just a very nice gift, very generous.
Okay.
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. No more items on the finance agenda, but we do have an executive session request.
I'll make a motion at 7:11 PM to adjourn into executive, or to move into executive session for the purpose of meeting with the law director for the city involving disputes that the city is involved with that are pending or imminent, involving pending or imminent litigation, to include the mayor and the law director.
Second?
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Heffinger.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Motion passes.
We'll be recessing into executive session to discuss the imminent litigation exiting from executive session back into finance, taking no action on any item discussed in the executive session, adjourning from finance, and moving on to council. We are now in recess.
Are we going downstairs?